I never really believed in the paranormal. Ghosts, demons, spirits, they were just make-believe. Stories people told to scare one another. But what happened to me wasn't just a story. And now, I wish I could take it all back. I suppose you could say I've always been a skeptic. The kind of guy who watches horror movies and scoffs when characters make idiotic decisions like splitting up or heading into the dark basement after hearing a strange noise. Yet, curiosity has a way of creeping in, doesn't it? A few beers, some peer pressure, and the next thing you know, you're doing something you never thought you would. This all started a few months ago, on a Saturday night at my friend Emma's place. It was your typical gathering, just a few of us lounging around her living room, drinking, talking, passing the time. Emma had recently moved into this old, creaky house on the edge of town. It had that classic haunted house vibe. You know the kind. Wooden floors that groaned when you walked on them. Dim lighting that made every corner of the room feel darker than it should. And an attic that none of us were brave enough to explore. Emma joked about it all the time, though I noticed she never went up there herself. That night, after one too many beers, Emma brought it out. The Ouija board. "Let's do it," she announced, a tipsy grin on her face as she placed the board in the centre of the coffee table. The room fell silent. I could see the unease on everyone's faces, but no one said anything. No one wanted to be the buzzkill. I rolled my eyes. "Come on, Em. You don't actually believe in that rubbish, do you?" Emma shrugged. "Maybe not, but it'll be fun, right? What's the harm?" That was the first mistake, thinking it was harmless. Against my better judgment, I agreed to join in. It was just a game, I told myself. Nothing would happen. So there we were, Emma, her boyfriend Ryan, my friend George, and me, sitting around the board, our fingers lightly resting on the planchette. It started slow. Emma asked the usual questions. "Is there anyone here with us?" No response. "What's your name?" Nothing. We all laughed it off, the tension breaking as Ryan mocked the whole thing, pretending to be a ghost and groaning dramatically. This could actually be a bit of harmless fun, I thought. But then, the planchette moved. I held my breath as it slid across the board. It didn't seem like anyone was pushing it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that one of us was just screwing around. I locked eyes with Emma. Her face had gone pale. "Okay, very funny," I said, my voice cracking more than I'd like to admit. "I'm not doing that," Emma whispered. The planchette stopped on the letter D. "Who's moving it?" George asked, his voice shaky. No one answered. The planchette began to move again, faster this time. D, E, A, D. It stopped. Dead. We all let out a nervous laugh, trying to brush it off. It's just a game, we told ourselves. It's just a dumb piece of wood, and one of us must be messing with the rest. But deep down, I could tell we were all rattled. Emma, being Emma, decided to push it further. "Are you dead?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The planchette moved, slow but deliberate. Y, E, S. Ryan tried to laugh, but it came out forced. "All right, who's the comedian?" No one admitted to it. "Okay, enough of this," I said, pulling my hands away from the planchette. "This is getting weird." Emma hesitated and then slowly removed her hands as well. "Maybe we should stop." But it didn't stop. The planchette slid on its own, without anyone touching it, dragging itself across the board as we all watched in stunned silence. This wasn't right. If anyone was doing this as a practical joke, they must have been the greatest showman alive. The planchette spelled out one word: M-I-N-E. I didn't want to play anymore. "Who's doing this?" George cried, standing up, his face drained of colour. I stood up too, backing away from the table. "This isn't funny. Who's messing with us?" Before anyone could answer, the lights flickered with a harsh electrical sound. Then they went out completely, plunging us into darkness. For a moment, no one spoke. We just stood there, frozen in the blackness, listening to the sound of our own breathing. I reached for my phone to turn on the flashlight, but before I could, a lone sound rung out in the room. A slow, deliberate knock. It was coming from upstairs. I wanted to tell myself it was just the house settling, or maybe a tree branch scraping against the window. But this wasn't that. This was something else. The knocking was steady, rhythmic, almost like someone was deliberately signalling us. "Emma?" I whispered, my voice barely audible to me over the pounding of my heart. I don't know," she stammered, her eyes wide, glancing towards the ceiling. "No one's upstairs. No one's been up there." The knocking grew louder, more insistent, and then it stopped, just as suddenly as it started. The silence that followed was the worst. We were just waiting for something else to happen, and sat motionless for what felt like minutes. But nothing. Were we just being spooked by some strange coincidences? Ryan, ever the skeptic, tried to laugh it off. "It's probably just the pipes or something. These old houses make weird noises." But even he didn't believe that. We all stood there in the dark, no one knowing what to do. Eventually, the lights flickered back on, but the relief I expected never came. Instead, there was only dread. Because now, we could see that the Ouija board had changed. The planchette was resting on the letter G. What does it want?" George whispered, his voice betraying the fear that he must have been feeling in that moment. As if in response, the planchette moved again, this time faster, almost aggressively. G-O-N-E. Gone. I felt my stomach drop. What does that mean? Suddenly, there was another knock, this time right behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. Something felt wrong in the room. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was that feeling you have when you know you're being watched. "We need to stop this," Emma said, her voice shaking. "This is wrong. We should never have..." Before she could finish, the door to the basement across the room creaked open, slowly, like we were being invited in. "No," George whimpered. "No, no, no." I took a step back, shaking my head. "We need to leave. Now." But as I moved, something grabbed me. It was cold, so cold, and I couldn't see it, just felt it. A hand wrapping around my wrist, pulling me towards the basement door. I struggled, yanking my arm free, and stumbled back into the coffee table, knocking over the Ouija board. The planchette flew off, clattering to the floor. And then, the basement door slammed shut with a deafening bang. We didn't need to be told twice. We ran. Emma grabbed her keys and we bolted out of the front door, not stopping until we were halfway down the street. My heart was pounding and I was drenched in sweat, but at least we were outside. At least we were away from that house. Or so I thought. For the next few days, I tried to forget about what happened. I didn't want to believe any of it was real. I tried to convince myself that it was just a coincidence, that the power outage and the noises were all part of some strange but explainable series of events. But deep down, I knew the truth. Something had followed me. It started with the little things at first. Doors creaking open in the middle of the night. Cold drafts when there shouldn't have been any. The constant feeling that I was being watched. I brushed it off, blaming it on paranoia, telling myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But then came the dreams. Night after night, I found myself back in that house, standing in front of the basement door. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't move. I couldn't look away. And every time, the door would creak open, just like it had that night. I never saw what was inside, but I could feel it. Something waiting for me in the darkness. And then, the knocking started again. It wasn't coming from the attic or the basement this time. It was coming from inside my apartment, right outside my bedroom door. One night, I woke up to the sound of that steady, deliberate knock. I froze in bed, my heart racing, and I listened. 3 knocks, then silence, and then a voice. "You're mine." It wasn't Emma's voice. It wasn't George's or Ryan's. It wasn't a voice I recognised at all, but I knew it was real, and I knew it was close. I wish I could say I figured out how to stop it. I wish I could tell you that this was all a bad dream and that everything went back to normal. But that's not the case. The knocking hasn't stopped. It's getting closer. And I don't think I'll be able to run from it this time. If you ever think about playing with a Ouija board, don't. I'm begging you. Whatever curiosity you have, whatever doubts you think might protect you, it's not worth it. Because once you open that door, it doesn't close. And once it finds you, it doesn't let go.